Welcome everybody. I have a few announcements before we start our talk today. TDC's World Best Typography Competition deadline is coming up on February 5th. Winning work will be featured in our annual and our website, and hopefully this coming year or the following year we'll actually have an annual exhibition again and it travels globally again. Live from Tokyo on Thursday, February 11th, we have Masashi Kawamura. That's at 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then live from Taipei, we will host Kensai Lee, and this talk is titled Learning the Rules is for Breaking the Rules, which is on February 24th. And that's at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Eastern Time. I also want to announce that we have 2 scholarships, both sponsored by Monotype, whose deadlines are both on February 26th. We have, in its second year, the 2021 TDC Superscript Scholarship, recognizing BIPOC students studying type design at a college or university in the United States. And we also have our Beatrice Ward Scholarship. This scholarship recognizes one female identifying college junior whose work demonstrates exceptional talent. This scholarship is available to anyone around the world. Full details are on the TDC website. Please help us spread the word on these scholarship offers. And lastly, please use the Q&A window to ask our speakers questions. We'll select them to ask our speakers after the talk. And so now coming from Berlin, we have Sandra Rendgen, and coming from, where are you now, Julius? Sao Paulo?
I am in, no, I live in Sao Paulo, but I'm spending now to be in North in a little town called Trancoso, which is where the Portuguese arrived in 1500s. So my wife has the family of my wife, they have a place here. So we staying isolated here with our daughter. She's just turned 1 year the day before yesterday. And so I'm here in Brazil. So I used to do 100 flights a year, and now I'm faced with this challenge of working remotely. Is actually today working from the only place you're able to stay, and so I'm here, so northeast of Brazil, and I'm happy to join. Thank you so much for the invite. And actually, I think the star today is Sandra, and I'm just like a liaison for her to exercise what she does best.
All right, so take it away, Sandra and Julius.
All right, cool. Thanks very much for the invitation. Thanks also so much for having us and for the introduction. Let me just share my screen with you. I hope everybody hears me well. And here we are. Are you seeing the screen? Just a little feedback?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Dear type directors, good afternoon, good evening from my side. I'm sitting in Berlin, not in the northern part of Brazil, but in Berlin. So it's dark over here already. I'm really happy that we're here now today, also like coming from different angles of the world. I do know that friends from Berlin are joining us, and I assume there's people from different places. So I'm Sandra, author, visualization expert. I work freelance and independently, and Julius introduced himself already. Julius, I saw on the Taschen website, your current title is Master of Design at Taschen Books. Is that the correct title?
Yeah, once in a while, I think in life you're surprised with stuff that people give you more credit than you actually should have.
Yeah.
But so basically, what I've done, so I'll be. I'm now in this advisory kind of capacity at Taschen and still doing a few things. But the idea is that basically I'm in charge of the design and the architecture. Now the architecture 2 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Cool. So what we wanted to talk about, the two of us today, in a joint conversation, is curation. Like we've created some three titles, bigger compilations of infographic works. And if you want to create a relevant collection that is sort of timeless and has long-term, like sticks around for a while, that's quite a complex process. And we wanted to share our process, our approach a little bit. Julius has done this like a million times with loads of books. We've done it together a few times. It's a really interesting job, and we wanted to share some of our approaches, some of the pitfalls, some of the high points of that, and guide you through a little bit. And I'll start. Julius has trouble connecting, but I'll just start and he'll chip in whenever he comes back. Just as a very broad and short introduction of the work we've done together, Julius and myself, I'm going to talk about mostly this black book over here on the left. It's Information Graphics. And this is sort of the seed we've created for covering the field of information graphics. What we wanted to do was like looking at what is happening in the field. You all may know and are aware that the whole topic of information visualization has really sort of exploded over the past years. And this is our first look at the field and our first try to get a grip on that. The blue poster you see in the upper center is a poster created by Nigel Holmes, one of the masters of the field, who's been around for a long time and has shaped our approach to doing infographics a lot. He created this poster for the first book, the black one, and so the other ones sort of came out of this first collaboration. Understanding the World and History of Information Graphics is two other books that I created with Taschen. And then National Geographic Infographics and the Food and Drink Infographics is titles that Julius did with other people. So this is sort of the whole infographic universe that was developed at Taschen. And I'm going to talk mostly about this first one, Information Graphics. So here at this point, Julius was going to make a few remarks about making books with Taschen, their general approach, about how books are also supposed to be a repository for things that you keep in your mind, sort of your private museum. But unfortunately, he's not here with us right now, so I hope he can fill in on that later on in this talk. One of the rules, like the very first meeting we had, he introduced me into one of his rules for creating compilations of work that stick, that really make something that people find worthwhile to engage with, was that you have 30 and 40%, like a mixture. So 30% should be the works that are, in your comfort zone. Sort of 30% should be like the works that everybody speaks about, that are the classics, that sort of make your anchor. Then you should have another 30% of what is surrounding that, which is expanding the field, expanding the horizon a little bit, and sort of underlines this first 30%. But then there's still another 40, and I've colored them in a strawberry red here, because this is the interesting part. This is the part that should be the surprise. This should be the part that really brings in something that people aren't expecting. And we now have Julius coming in here again. Julius, do you hear me?
Yeah, no, I can hear you now again. I'm sorry, I had a connection failure here, but I'm back. So kind of.
Yeah. Cool. So I just introduced the infographic books, the infographics universe that we have that we've created at Taschen, sort of the whole series, and was looking at your first thoughts about the general approach at Taschen, creating books, and your 30-30-40 rule. So maybe you want to jump in here.
Yeah. So basically, what I always have told you and the authors I work with, I think it's important to acknowledge that the editor is just a liaison. What we looking for is like people that understand the work. In the same way, a designer is willing, is happy to work with a good editor that understands design language and so on, and knows how important the designer is. I have to understand how important it is with work with good authors. And the 30-30-40 is a framework that, it could be 20-20-60, whatever, but it basically means that to create this dialogue with the readership, you need to take people from something that they identify with to something that they actually that they will learn something completely new. Is that you take people's words, colors, whatever, and you take with something that they know more or less about it, but then they want to know more, and at the end, what they take back, what they take home, so to speak, when they go back to sleep, what they learned is what I call the learning zone, and the learning zone is where the value is, the real value is in every book. And I think, Sandra, what we tried to do, and when you first presented your idea for the first book to us, we said, this, we are in the data. Data could be used for a number of things. And then the learning zone comes when they understand that, for example, it is used from, statistics, let's say from ONS, the Office of National Statistics in the arts, and that is where the new part, the use of data is much broader than the zone, and is to tap into these three areas to engage the reader. To do that, there's one thing that we both as authors, as editors, as also as readers, we always assessing what I call your private museum. All the experiences we had before, and all the things we hold dear, and the things we see value in, the things we despise and we are disgusting and so on, but they're part of our private idea of what is to be counted. And when we able to assess through these three things, these feelings, we have a chance that the reader will be engaged. After that, it all's down to the quality of the content you're delivering, and this is where I'm always looking for people to look into that, like someone like you, of course.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think this is a very interesting thought before you actually start creating a specific title, right? As an approach, this is an important setup. Also for me, it was a learning process to understand how Taschen sort of looks at specific ideas and at specific ideas for titles before you start, collecting material and doing the whole process. How do you actually tune in with your audience to make sure it's not just intuition, but you actually tap into something that that takes readers a while, and that has a bit of a future also, because this is something that I also find interesting to emphasize, that you were talking about a long process, until a book is created. And we'll take you through a little bit. Until a book is created, it takes a while until it's done. And then you want it to stick around for a while. You want it to be relevant for a while. And so you have to take a perspective where people, where you deliver value for quite a while, and where people in 4 or 5 years from now are still interested in looking at that. So let me look at the process of curation. So I think these preliminary notions were good to understand how people, like the team at Taschen, sort of scans the surveys, the general field of cultural production, and looks at where is it worthwhile to produce a bigger compilation, and then that's how the concept for a specific title starts to form, right? In that case, I pitched the idea to Taschen, and then you start approaching, like, in several discussions and dialogue, you start approaching, what could this book look like? What could, how could you get to a specific form, to a specific structure, and to a collection of material that is worthwhile showing. For me, the process of curation is made up of like the three major steps. Are those: you first collect material, you start scanning the field, you start looking around, you try to get your folders full of good stuff, and I'll look at that more closely. Then you have to work with the material. You have to identify certain threads, you have to identify stories, themes, trends, and sort of give this, you have to work this material, you have to give it a structure, and to sort of also try and give the book that you want to shape in the end a sort of storyline and a structure. And then you get to the point that's, the sort of also the hard part, to actually make the selection and give the whole thing a flow. And if I look at it more in depth, let me just take you through a little bit. So the first thing that I would like to mention is you start collecting, and that sort of goes parallel with this whole setup of a concept for a specific book. So Julius has described how they approach making a book and how they approach looking into a topic in general. So we'll talk about an idea that I had pitched, and this already, at this point, I will have collected some material already. And I can tell you, it looks neat here on the slide, but it's really a fuzzy and industrious process, really. Because you really want to have a lot of material in a very good quality. You want to have a design quality that is like the highest possible standard, but you also want to have works which are in a way intellectually stimulating, right? So you want to have works that are interesting enough that you will look at them still with interest and fascination in 4 to 5 years. So what you want to do when you collect material is you want to go beyond the obvious, right? Because, I mean, if you are just presenting what everybody sees on the internet or in their, usual magazines, then okay, it's work, but it's not that interesting. It won't take you that far. And Julius and I were always saying, like, when people say in the end, when they look at that book and in the end say like something like, how did they find that? Where did they dig that out? This is what we want to achieve. This is where we want to go. People should have the feeling that we really looked in every corner, basically. And as I said, you have to go beyond the obvious. And I want to show you here a picture of our friend Michael Stoll. We collaborated with him several times. Michael is an infographic professor, graphic design professor, teaches infographics, has been for 20 years, collects historical infographics. And he said at some point, for my students, the old is the new. And that sort of stuck with us because for us, having looked at stuff for quite a while, we didn't really understand what he was saying at first. But hey, this is exactly the thing. Like he said, my students, they know what's on the internet. They know what's trending in social media. They've seen it all. They're online all the time. So they see what's in circulation, but they don't see the things that are outside of the regular circulation or outside of the regular, circles, discussions and debates. So you need to dig further, and you need to go beyond what's like right in front of you. And so how does it go? Research process. maybe I say how my research process, this is what my research process looks like. I don't know if you have other things to say about that, Julius, but for me, it's really, when I prepared the talk, I thought that the description of like, it's almost like a physical state for me, as if I had sensors all over my body and they're like sensing and scanning the field. And it's like a state of mind. Collecting material is a state of mind for me. So I will always be like, I will have my ears, my eyes everywhere, or I'll try to at least. And so, I mean, doing active online research or library research is like the obvious thing. And it's also obvious that you'll request your contacts, you'll ask around, you'll ask everybody, you'll have experts recommend stuff, like expert recommendations. For instance, in infographics and data visualization, as you know, this is a field that also has sort of like a real an expert community who are not so much into design, but who work with visualizations on a daily basis. And so we'd have a number of people who would just recommend us stuff. We also really monitor the artwork. This is something that I personally do because I love it. I also remember, Julius, do you remember that too? At some point you were in a museum in Madrid. I think it was the Reina Sofia Museum, and saw a graphic by the German painter Gerhard Richter, who's like super famous, not for infographics, but there was this graphic he had done like in the 70s or something. And Julius sent it to me and said, look, we need to have this. Remember that, Julius?
Yeah, so basically we were at this exhibition and about the history of art.
Unfortunately,
it's like, this is not something that like will just exhibition of his work.
I'm afraid I'm going to take it from here because I don't hear you, Julius, anymore, really. So, checking if it comes back. Okay, please excuse the bad audio quality. I'll take it from here and say, so monitoring the art world, there's always and repeatedly works that come from more like an art background, and those are interesting for us because they usually bring like a twist or a very free approach to, like a freestyle approach to doing things, or a completely freestyle aesthetics, or they turn things around. And so this has always been like a very important source for me. It's something that Julius is really an expert in, is keeping in touch with designers. Like he is always and continuously in touch with designers all around the world. And so being in this constant exchange with people who design stuff all around the world, and sort of, you always sort of hear things, you are in touch with people. I was just saying, that you are the master and the expert of keeping in touch with designers and like maintaining long-term relationships, basically, so that you have, so that you get constant input also about what's happening in different fields. And this is something that really helped us with the book Information Graphics as well. And then, of course, exhibitions and research in libraries, but also looking at other fields. And this is what I meant before when I said it's like it's not just the thing that I do, collect material. It's almost like a physical, like a state of mind. Because once I collect material for a book, I'll try to be everywhere I'll try to scan everything that I come in touch with for ideas, for notions, for just tiny little hints, and then I'll try to follow them. And so this is sort of how how you get your folders filled with interesting stuff. And here's one little story that also connects our work, Julius's and mine. Julius at some point was saying there was this poster. We've heard about this great poster. It was in an exhibition, and it shows like a man with, like, you know, you could see the inside and you could see what's happening inside and how the physical, like the body works and the anatomy works and the processes inside the body. And let's just try and find it. And then we dug and researched and asked around, also like to Michael Stoll, for instance, who is a collector, and then finally identified the poster that we just had heard about. We hadn't even seen it. And then found the poster, and then also found the people who were, it was made by Fritz Kahn. You may know it here, Der Mensch als Industriepalast. At least in Germany, it's quite a classic. I think many people will know it. And Fritz Kahn was a popular science author in Germany, later migrated to the US and different countries, and was published popular science books, basically, together with designers and illustrators. And so Julius would then find the people who were in charge of his estate and were willing to prepare a whole book on the field, like on his work. And so this is sort of like a beautiful thing that came out of this collaboration. And also, you know, I'm telling this here in the sense of collecting material, because it's sort of, how do you say that? It grew out of our, you know, need and search for good work and for collaboration and for material. So this is also a title that Taschen at some point produced, and here's just the facade of the Berlin Taschen store, and they, as you can see, for the release of the book, they prepared it. And so this notion of just trying to collect stuff is very important, and it's industrious, it's a little bit fuzzy, but for me also very fulfilling. It's happy, because whenever you find something, you're like, whoa, this is great. This is gonna make, you know, an even greater addition to the collection. The point is, you need a lot of material. For a huge reference book of the Taschen format, you really do need quite a few pieces, as I said, in a good quality, in a good design quality. You need to work from various sources, and you want to have a huge pool of material that you can work with. Also, diversity is key. You really want to have material that's diverse in style and message, in approach, and also in the place of origin. So that's, you know, that's one of the challenges, that you really need to get different things together. Okay, so now you're there. You have all this enormous amount of material, and this is the point where you usually you know, it can make you feel overwhelmed, and you feel like you're drowning in this stuff. And that's the point. That's also really a hard but very fulfilling point in the process. You have to start working your material. You want to find the stories, you want to identify threads, you want to identify trends, stories behind the graphics, but also what you want to achieve is to get a grip on what is happening in the field, right? You don't just want to publish a collection of images. You want to give an idea of, you know, you are watching developments, you're showing what's happening in the field. And this can be challenging. You feel like at some point your head explodes, but it's also very interesting. So for instance, just to give you a few examples and show you a few images also, for information graphics, the threads or the trends that we identified, looking at this enormous mass of material that we collected, we saw some emerging trends, and I think that still holds true. Those things sort of really exploded in the field. One is database cartography. So the whole notion of getting big data into plotting them on maps, basically. So here's a project by Aaron Koblin. It's called Flight Pattern. Some of you will know this. You can see it easily charts the map of the US and its flights across the US in a period of 24 hours. And you'll see how intricately this is plotted. You also have a very fine color scheme here for the lines, to a degree that you can really see the landing and the departing routes. And so this type of work, it's become really, really important because it's sort of like a staple of visualization, because, plotting big data on maps is something that happens all over the place now. Maybe not always as fancy as this, but it's becoming ever more present also in the work of newsrooms and media outlets. So people are using this all the time, and it's very, very important format. But also something that I would call infographic activism. The fact that we have more and more tools available for infographics to be plotted, to be printed, is something that made NGOs pick up on the topic. So a lot of NGOs are using infographics to push their topics, to give information to people. So this is one thing that we found in a research project about a Mexican drug cartel. And I'll just show you briefly. So you can see here it's generated, right? It's like, it's not like manually designed. But the point is that the fact that these tools are available, and they've become much more elaborate over the years. So they provide you now with a lot more design choices and type options and breaking options and stuff. And that fact really makes sort of infographic activism happening, because NGOs have a way to use that kind of communication. Personal expression is something I think that was quite present in the design world over the past years, using infographics for sort of relating or describing your daily routines and daily lives, basically, and describing really private things. And I think I still love this example. It's from Christoph Niemann, Christoph Niemann's blog for the New York Times, Abstract City. And I think you really quickly get the point why this is funny, because you have the very, very private and funny tone of voice, and then the painted aesthetics. And then on the other hand, you have the sciencey type of diagram, which is a tension, and that tension is funny, and that is something that's been used quite a bit. Many of you will know the designer Giorgia Lupi, who's done that for quite extensively, questioning how you can bring the human into the data. And I think this is something that started here with the whole idea of personal expression in infographics. Database reporting was one other trend that was really important for us when we worked on information graphics. So everything that you would term data journalism today. Here's an example from National Geographic, and you will know this type of map, this type of reporting is really prevalent in the media, in high-end media today. And I think this is a very good and important point. So here's, for instance, this was about which parts of New Orleans are still under threat several years after Katrina. So how many people basically were at risk to be flooded again. And what is interesting is that the type of skills needed to create these maps, there's a lot of design skills needed, right? Even for the little things, like for the labeling, for the to work with the type, to put the type on maps so that you can still read it, and to work with color, schemes. There's a very high-end level of skills that you need, both in terms of design, but also in terms of how to encode information with that stuff, and to work the two together, and to make things legible and accessible. And those skills have extended enormously over the past years in the newsrooms, and I think that's an important point. And the last thing that I really liked when looking at the material for information graphics was the idea that a diagram could be an art form. And we've seen quite a few works, and I just love them all. I just want to show you this painting, actually, by artist Ward Shelley. It's the Frank Zappa chart. And what am I going to say? I just love it. It's entertainment. This is really entertainment. It charts the life and the artistic musical cosmos of Frank Zappa, and I'll show you a detail so you get an idea of the intricate aesthetics also. And I just still find really funny and hilarious, the idea of a diagram gone mad, or a diagram going out of control, spiraling out of control, like, you know, there's ever more things growing out of that. And so this is something that I always keep in mind, that people take these diagram types and then make art of that, basically. So here you are with a beautiful selection of all those beautiful works, basically, and that's the point where you get like overwhelmed completely. And the thing is, you really want to make sure you understand what's happening in the field and also show that in the book. But this is the point where you have to really make, you know, you have to come to terms, basically. You have to get a grip on that, right? So you work the material, and then you have to come to a point where the book gets a structure. And we have lost Julius, but it's very, he is a very good partner in this relationship between like editor on the publisher's side and then the author, in this case being me, because he was very helpful in sort of providing the background and the rails along which to work, but so he would be the guide, and he would know which structure and which general outlook such a Taschen book should have. But he would still, you know, lead the way, but he would still let me have my say, because I was the one who had the grip on the material, basically. And that also, like, because, you know, if you are stuck with this material, this is the point where you need to discuss the chapters. Where, like, how are we ever going to sort this into chapters? And as I said, I identified quite a few trends, but then you still have a lot of works where you feel like doesn't really fit in anywhere. So what we did in the end was to resort to a more to a system that is bigger, you know, that has bigger categories. It's a system that was created by Richard Saul, or suggested by Richard Saul Warman, because he said there's only a few ways in which you can sort information. And 4 of those are location, time, category, and hierarchy. And this is what we went by, basically, because this made it much easier. We had much more flexibility to sort all these beautiful works. We would look at what is their major organization scheme. Is it by place? Is it by time? And in this manner, we put them all into these chapters here. All right, and once you get to this point where you feel like, okay, I have a structure for my book now, I know where it's going to go and what it's going to look like, you get to that point where you actually have to make that selection. And I feel like this is sort of the hardest part sometimes, because before you're like, oh my God, you're finding all this beautiful stuff, and it's just such a fulfilling process to work with these things and to try and understand what they're about, and to find the backstories. And now it's like you have to count them. I'd like to throw a few things out, right? But you work top down, meaning for me, there's always been sort of anchors. There's always been those projects where you feel like, those 30, 40 projects where you're like, these are just so important, so cool. They sort of burn, they keep you awake at night. And those are your anchors, and you have those anchors like across your book, across your chapters. And that gives you your backbone, your structure from which to work. And then you can fill that up with, you know, the ones that round the selection, that give it the diversity, and also the flow through the book that you want to have. And I guess the why it is the hardest part is that you still have those 1,000 projects that you can't feature, right? So this is why you feel you have to make decisions against projects and against things. And, you know, you feel like you've found so many good things, and it would be worthwhile sharing all of that. But there is the point where you just have to say you can't. But I really have come to think that there is a value in that. There is, and it's not just the saying, less is more. It's really like this edited version. The book gives you this edited version, and somebody has made that decision for you, that it's worthwhile looking at this selection of projects, and the other projects are also interesting, but you can't look at everything. And so this has taken, this is where Julius is, has very interesting thoughts usually to share. Analog versus digital. You will know websites where there's a whole lot of projects collected, but still you feel lost. And this is the interesting thing, where you really, this whole editing process that I just described, as tedious as it can be, and as tedious as this, selection and throwing out projects can be, you in the end you get that sort of edited thing. But then Julius has the saying of the book as a platform, which I like as an idea very much, because you have this fixed selection, but ideally this selection is contains so many references that you would sit there and I've had people say to me that they are reading my book with a tablet or something beside them, and then they keep Googling. And this is an idea that I like very much, that you have the book as a core product, but it then has all these connections to the outside world. And so it has all these seeds basically and threads that people can find in the book and then take up and then follow and then find new things. But they can always come back to the core collection that is sort of an edited platform that helps you then go further. So, this was the sort of neatly designed process of collecting, identifying, and selecting stuff. It doesn't look like that. It more goes like this, like around and around, and it loops and back and forth. But I mean, I think that goes for every major project, and that is the same with creating such a book. There's a little shout out to the team at Taschen. You need to have really good project managers for that. Project managers who have like an obsession with detail and are still, managing the process and driving it forward. There's also the good thing in deadlines. So you need to get this done and fixed. And so I'm really happy to have worked with Julius and the good team at Taschen. So that was the description. And this is the end of my talk. I hope that was happy so far, and I thank you for listening. And I'm really curious to take your questions.
Great. Thank you for that, Sandra. And if Julius, you're still there, let us know. But maybe you're having a drink at this point at your cabana. Who knows? So I had a few questions just for the audience, since we didn't really get into like the sort of contents or meat of the book and what to expect in the book. Can you name a few key information graphic designers that are in the book? I know you mentioned a few, but are there others that stand out, and who are the key sort of like information graphic designers that people should be more familiar with?
Well, who was in the book? I would, so Nigel Holmes, I mentioned him already. He was in the book with a few works, and he even created a poster. And he's like the classic generation, I would say. I don't know if he's with us today, but if so, hello. Also, John Grimwade, who had been at Condé Nast Traveler for a very long time, and has also created like a very distinctive style of his own. From the generation that has gone more into interactive stuff, it should be Moritz Stefana. I think I'm not. We have him in the next book. I think he wasn't in this one. Moritz Stefana, he operates under the acronym Truth and Beauty Operator. So, and Aaron Koblin, and yeah, I think the ones that are the Guardian. Then a lot of institutional teams were in there, and that still holds true. I mean, National Geographic is always a wonderful institution for anything related to visualization, as is the New York Times, as is the Guardian. And David McCandless is a very interesting figure. He's also taken to creating a sort of infographic newsletter, which has also just recently provided a lot of COVID-related infographics. They operate under the name Information is Beautiful. They're based in London. And yeah, I guess those were a few names. You see here, somebody I can see here in my own background is Joost Gotens. This is maybe special knowledge. He's not very widely known in the design world maybe, but he's been doing wonderful, wonderful atlases. He's based in Amsterdam. That's somebody I would also like to mention. And the lab, the density design at Politecnico in Milan. That's a sort of a university lab, and it was directed by Paolo Cucciarelli for many, many years until he went to Boston last year. And Paolo, together with his students, like Paolo basically with his team, raised a whole generation of good designers, among which Giorgia Lupi. And they all came out of that same school that sort of really connected design issues with the issue of how can we tackle complex matters? How can we bring a visual aspect to that?
Okay. We have a question from the audience. So from Maria Galante, information graphics have been increasingly part of design and science education. Do you see this continuing and building the field? Like, why do we need all these information graphics, do you think?
Well, generally, I would like to say that information graphics have been around for quite a long time. There was like a few years ago, there was the sense that this is something new popping up, but I think it has seen this surge really connected to digitization, new digital tools, and to the rise of the internet. So that gave visualization a real boost. And to go back to the question, Maria, yes, absolutely. I think it's being established in ever more fields of our lives. And that goes for a variety of reasons. One reason being there's data all over. Everybody has to deal with data. Everybody has to deal with statistics, with also just with tracking stuff in their accounts, in their apps, in their, everything's tracked all the time. And somebody needs to visualize that. And what I'm noticing is that there's ever more and ever more elaborate tools for that. And this is really a very good decision, a very good development, because we don't have to create every visualization from scratch anymore. At this point, it's really a lot about automating things like that and like bringing this design knowledge that has developed in the field into the tools. I mean, you'll always have, major projects that are handmade and hand-coded and hand-designed. But this whole idea of tools is really a big thing. Like a lot of newsrooms work with tools today, and that's really cool because they can create a lot of infographics now, and the design level for those is really rising.
Okay. Question from Karen Perry. A lot of infographics done by designers don't stand up to general data visualization best practices. Is everything in the book reviewed by experts with this in mind, or do you choose examples mainly for visual interest?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question, Karen. Thank you for that. A very tricky question. Well, what we did is, no, we couldn't have statistical experts for every single work. That was just not feasible. Also for things like the the network graph that I showed you here, that's here on the upper right, about the drug cartel in Mexico. I mean, we don't have. I didn't. It was part of a paper, like a research paper, sociological research paper. I didn't read the paper, actually. I just closely looked, and I had a fact checker with me. We closely looked at whatever we had at hand, but it was not possible to really check the correctness of every representation. I actually found a few mistakes in the representations for the book, and then I had some designers who corrected that, and some designers who just didn't care, and then we didn't show it. But it was impossible. And as the general background, I mean, we didn't. I can say that we didn't choose the works only for eye candy. I mean, that's what I said. You want to have something that sticks. You want to have something that is relevant still in a few years. So you want to, you want to have a historical horizon. So if you only have zeitgeist eye candy, then that's not going to stick. But at the same time, you are aware of the size and the format of those Taschen books. They must have something that really, you must have visuals that carry such a book. You must have visuals that carry a double spread in a book like that. And it's like, I can only speak in centimeters, but it's like 37 centimeters high and 25 wide. That's quite a format. So you actually need something that is a great visual. And in terms of fact-checking visualizations, I mean, like complex data visualizations of the type of Aaron Koblin's work here, it's really hard to fact-check that. And for like in the big newsrooms, you really need an interdisciplinary team and a rigid fact-checking attitude, I would say, to make sure that those are, and I would expect that from the major news outlets such as the New York Times, that they take care of that. But in smaller outlets, I don't know if this is always the case. And as a reader, it's very good to have a skeptical eye on that always.
Okay. Question from Richard Brath. What emerging themes or trends do you see coming now that you've done this sort of like contemporary research?
Thanks, and hi, Richard. Nice to see you here. That's a good question. I mentioned already, and I think that's going to continue, and that's going to help establish information graphics even more in our daily lives. The automation of a lot of that production. There's quite a few enterprises. You may know the tool Flourish from a company based in London. You may know the tool Data Wrapper from a company based here in Berlin, and there's quite a few others. And they provide a tool for creating, and of course the software such as Tableau and stuff. They provide beautiful software for creating visualizations, and that's going to help establish infographics on a daily basis, even in a low level, in small displays, and so I think it's going to be in our lives much more. And I should hope that on the other hand, we still will have a lot of this more creative approach to infographics, to see this as a creative expression of feelings of our lives, but also of facts. Maybe you may be aware of the work of Mona Shalabi. She is a journalist with The Guardian, and she has established a very interesting style of like her own hand drawing, in which she shows diagrams, and this is a very interesting dialectic, because it explicitly doesn't have this neutral or polished style. It's meant to be a little crude. So you know that it's her speaking, but still she's a journalist, and still there's fact-checking behind it. And so this whole way of, the automation and the tools and infographics as the usual thing every day is one thing, but I'm really curious to see which other creative ways people will explore for working with infographics.
And we have time for maybe one last question, and I just want to tell.
Should I be quicker?
No, I just want to tell the audience that we can answer your questions if we don't get time for them after Sandra and I can help to answer your questions after the talk, and we can email you answers.
Twitter also. Use Twitter to ask and keep the discussion going.
What are some digital tools used in visualizations, since we have a lot of students in the audience who might be curious on how to create?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question, and I have to say I'm not really an expert on that. I know that the Adobe Suite is still a valid tool for many people, but that's more like the handy style, like where you tweak everything yourself. And then there's a lot of web technologies. D3 is like one of the very interesting libraries that has been around for quite a few years. And I know that there's tools and libraries attached to that to even tweak that, to include like 3-dimensional objects, or to include like a specific aesthetics, such as there's a library that will make your diagrams look like hand painted, for instance, but they're computer generated, or like. And so I would probably, if I was a design student with like an affinity for coding, I would probably look into this this whole set of web technologies that's made for visualization. D3 again.
Okay. So I think that's all the time that we have this afternoon. So thank you, Sandra. She's also the author of a book on Charles Minard, a well-known 19th century information graphic designer, even though that wasn't the term back then. And thanks again, Julius, if you're still out there. We will try to connect soon. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and stay safe.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.